beautiful island of Kauai, Hawaii. My name is Jong Han. I am the president of Korean War Legacy Foundation. In my foundation, there are more than 1,500 of Korean War veterans, not just from the United States, but also other 20 countries, except India, who provided medical and battle assistance during the Korean War. I am about to leave for India so we can complete 22-country Korean War veterans digital archive. And we are doing this to preserve your memory, first of all, because it's been a long time. And we want to honor your service as a Korean War veteran. But most importantly, we are using this interview to make a curricular resources on the Korean War so that our history teachers in the classroom can use this one. We already saw the curriculum book there that we published with the National Council for Social Studies to make Korean War not forgotten and to teach about the lessons of the Korean War to the future generations to come. It's my great honor and pleasure to meet you, sir, and thank you for coming. Please introduce yourself. What is your name, sir?
James Mitsuo Oyadomari.
Could you spell your last name?
Oyadomari.
And that's a Japanese origin.
Yeah,
yes.
Okinawa Japanese.
Okinawa.
Japanese Okinawa.
Yes. What is your birthday?
November 30, 1931.
So you make 91-year-old?
90.
90.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to add one more year to yours. But you look great, sir. Huh?
I feel great. I feel blessed. I'm still alive.
What do you think? What is the secret to your health?
I don't know. Just common sense. Don't get enough exercise and, sensible eating. Don't overeat. And have a good positive attitude.
Excellent. That's great to know. Where were you born?
Koloa, Kauai, Hawaii.
Koloa? Could
Yes.
you spell it?
Koloa.
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 Koloa. In Hawaii.
Kauai, yeah. Hawaii.
In Kauai.
Kauai, Hawaii.
Please tell me about your family background. What did your parents doing and your siblings? How many of them? What were you doing when you were growing up?
Okay. Anyway, my father came to Hawaii. I think it was 1914 or so. He was about 16 or 17 years old.
Uh-huh.
He came to work in a plantation, and he worked about 10 years or so. And by then he was like 24 years old. And he and another man started a Japanese language paper.
Ah.
And my mother came in 1924, I think, as
Yeah.
a picture bride. So, and like I say, I was born 1931, and I remember when I was 5 or so that they were bringing in equipment and machinery in a shop, a building, when my dad and another man started a Japanese language paper. I remember that,
That's very nice.
I think business-wise, I don't think it caught on because it was Depression years. So,
Yes.
times are really tough. Yeah.
So you speak Japanese?
Very little anymore. We don't use our language anymore.
But you were able to speak Japanese
When
when
we
you were
younger,
young?
yeah, but not anymore.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
And how many brothers and sisters did you have?
I have 5 brothers. Let's see, 2 above me and 2 below me. And they
So
all-
you were in the middle.
Yeah. So my Japanese name is Mitsuo, And they all served during the Korean War. But everybody came home safe.
What do you mean? 5 of your brother?
Yeah, including myself.
So
yeah.
5, all of you were in the Korean War?
Yeah, but some after the war was over. But we all served during the Korean War.
So your older brother, 2 of them, were in the Korean War.
Yeah.
What's their name?
The oldest one was, my dad died young, so the oldest one was like the head of household. So he was drafted when he was about 27 years old, after I returned from Korea.
Oh,
And my next oldest was in the National Guard, but he volunteered after I was drafted, in 1951. My two younger brothers also volunteered. And the second youngest one, I should say, served in the U.S. but never did go to Korea. And the youngest one did go to Korea after the war was
after
over.
the war.
Yeah.
So your second old brother were in during the war, right?
Yeah.
What about the first one was not, right?
No, he
No.
was drafted later because he was the oldest, like the breadwinner, because my dad already passed away by then.
I've been interviewing so many Korean War veterans, but I never heard about whole 5 of them either were in Korea during the war or even after the war.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we were fortunate, let's say,
And
Well,
everybody came back in
Yes,
one piece.
yeah, everybody came home.
Excellent.
Yeah.
But what high school did you graduate here?
From Waimea High School,
W-A-I.
W-A-I-M-E-A, Waimea. That's in the west side. In
When did you graduate?
1949.
So that's the high school that all of your brothers graduate.
Yes.
And you were not taught anything about Korea during your school?
I don't recall remembering anything about Korea until the war started.
So now, including yourself, all the brothers of Oyadomari family went to Korea.
Let's see.
What do you think
was
about-
served during the war, but
Yeah.
let's see, two other brothers served in Korea, and the other one remained in the U.S., and one just was stationed in
Right.
Fort Jefferson, Honolulu.
So you didn't know anything about Korea. I assume that your brothers, older and younger, didn't know anything about Korea. But now you are all were in Korea or during the war.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
I don't know. I think we were fortunate. That's why. I mean, everybody came home safe.
Yeah, but still, all of them were related to Korean War and
Right.
Korea.
Yes.
Huh. Have you been back to Korea since?
2 times on the revisit program. There was 2001 and 2011, I think.
So when you revisited Korea, what did you think about it? What did you saw? And tell me the details. Details that you saw in your revisit to Korea in 2001 and 2011. And you were in Korea. When was you in Korea?
1952, and then left June 1953, I think.
Before armistice.
Yeah. And armistice was signed in July.
July.
Yeah.
When did you arrive in Korea in 1952?
May 28, 1952.
Mid?
May
May.
28. I reached my unit.
Tell me about the differences between 1952 and 2011, the Korea you saw.
Okay, when I arrived in Korea in, I think it was May, like I said, 28 or so, we landed at Busan. And I remember we had breakfast and then caught a train, a slow train, all the way from Busan to I think Incheon and then Seoul. So, and they were, I think mostly farmland we passed by, and we got to Incheon was about midnight. It was a slow train, so I didn't see anything about Incheon, and then also in Seoul, it was dark. And I remember it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. We transferred over to a truck, and leaving Seoul, and there was an archway, one of those archways. I'm not sure which one. It must have been the West Gate. Because then we drove to Chuncheon, had breakfast there, and then went by truck, which took at least 4 or 5 hours on dusty roads going from Chuncheon to the Kumsong River where I was stationed. But it was slow going because it was winding and it was a long drive. And at that time, we didn't know it was close to the front lines. You know, it was about 4 miles behind the front lines. And I was in headquarters, and at that time, the unit just arrived there in the new position, so we were living in tents. And there was a lot of trying to get a bunkers built, filling sandbags and, getting lumber and stuff like that. So the first 2 or 3 months were mostly spent building bunkers. And then after that, I was transferred up to the radio relay, which was about 2 miles further, front lines, and I could easily see the main line of resistance with the enemy's mountain opposition. I think they call it Capitol Hill, and they were
Capitol Hill.
I think something like that, and then it was completely bare of vegetation because with all the bombing and artillery, it was like all just brown, no vegetation at all. It was, and then I think on the right side was Hill 949, 949. That was our position.
949.
Yeah.
And that's where you were.
No, I mean just about half a mile from then, the relay station.
Right.
Yeah. And there were just 3 of us, one half-track driver and one other radio man. So.
You were a radio man too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you're telling me about this, and this is fascinating. You arrived in Busan May 28th of 1952.
I'm not sure it was 28. It might have been 27,
Yeah, it's okay. And then you went to Incheon, Seoul, Chuncheon, and then you went to Kumsong? You said Kumhwa.
I think this was the Kumsong River, about the central. It flows into the Pukan River.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was close to where we were. Kumsong flowed into the Pukan,
And Capitol Hill 949.
Capitol Hill was directly in front of the relay station, and that was held by the Chinese. But on the right of our relay station, it was 949. 949, as they used to call it. It was, I think, our position, our main line of resistance.
But my original question was to ask you to compare Korea you saw in 1952-53 and 2011. How drastically changed? Tell me the details, please.
Yeah, when I went back for the relay station, I was very surprised how the country was rebuilt in, 50 years or so? I mean, I couldn't imagine there were so many high-rises, apartment houses, and the streets were like modern U.S. streets, the turnpikes, what they call it, the roundabout thing. It was like the U.S. cities almost, the streets, And that was done in, 40 years or 50 years. And it was a time I met a Korean guy in Hawaii just by chance. And he told me that, after the war, when they started rebuilding, sometimes they'll work 40, 50 hours straight and not even sleep. They spend a lot of time in hard work. And I'm so proud of the country, what they accomplished in those short years. Because when we left, it was pretty devastated.
Tell me the detail you saw, Korea, when you left Korea from the war.
Okay, but I was stationed, like I say, on the banks of the Kumsong River.
Yeah.
And there were no civilian or Korean buildings because they had to keep the civilians out of the battle area. So I didn't see too much of the cities besides that, you know. Just like I say, when I was in Seoul, it was like midnight, so I didn't see too much of the devastation like that.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly the countryside where there was like farm shacks and things like that.
When you left Korea in 1953, have you...
Oh yeah, 53.
53. Had you ever imagined that Korea would become like this today?
No, not. I'm just so proud of the people over there.
This war has been more than 70 years, already 72 years.
Yeah.
We don't have a peace treaty. There is a still armistice.
Yeah.
Do you want to see the end of the Korean War before you die?
Oh, sure, yes. But how is that going to be accomplished? Because North Korea is not going to sign. I mean, they got a crazy man as president or the head of North Korea. You know, he's starving his own people.
Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, he doesn't care. He just eats and put on weight, that guy, and gets fat.
So how are we going to solve this problem?
I don't know. I don't know if the UN can come in and do something, but then China and Russia is going to defend North Korea.
Exactly.
What can be done? Even now, look at Ukraine, you know, what Russia is doing. It's terrible what Russia is doing in Ukraine.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't understand what Putin is doing.
Yeah.
I never thought he would invade Ukraine. Never, never.
But it's happening right under our
Right,
nose.
yeah.
It's unbelievable. So, when were you drafted?
Okay, November 28, I think, 1951.
Drafted as Army?
Yes.
And where did you get the boot camp?
Okay, I went to Schofield Barracks for, I think, 2 months of basic training and 3 months of radio training. And then when I came back from the...
So from there, where did you go?
Okay, then I went... Well, after a 30-day furlough, I came back on Sunday. Then Monday, we took a plane from, okay, I don't know if it was Hickam or...
Hickam.
And flew about 11 hours to Wake Island, had breakfast about 45 minutes, and took off for Camp Drake in Japan. And I think we stayed for one night and caught a ship to Busan. And that night, either was a typhoon or a storm anyway, and the boat ride was rough, and practically everybody was seasick, you know.
Mm.
But we landed in Busan safely.
Mm-hmm. And what about you? What was your unit? What division? And
176 AFA, that's Armored Field Artillery. The 105 was mounted on the half track.
176 AF.
Yeah, 176.
AF.
It was
Armored
Armored Field Artillery, National Guard outfit from Pennsylvania.
Okay, and where does that belong to? Any division or?
They called it unattached. They would be
Unattached.
sent here and there to support different units.
But you did a radio man there.
Yeah, I was a radio
Yeah.
operator.
Were you able to do Morse code?
Yeah, we took that up in school, but we didn't use it in Korea. It was all voice.
So, were there any dangerous moment that you might have been killed?
When we go up to the relay station, they would be incoming, but mostly it would be over our heads, you know.
Mm-hmm.
One time, one round maybe landed about 25 yards from the half track, and the half track just shuddered, you know, when the explosion, and then like half a second or 1 second later, the debris just fell on the roof. There was about the closest one, and there were another time when I was up there with this boy, with this soldier from Maui, Lester Fushikoshi. We were receiving income, and we could hear when they fired it from, because the wind was blowing from their position to ours. And after a while, he would recognize or isolate that one tube, the boom, and then the shell would come right over our head, but maybe 10 yards over our head, and he would tell me, there. And sure enough, boom, you know. I don't know how he recognized or identified that one tube, because it go boom, 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 you know. And that one, he could isolate it, and he would tell, there's coming again, boom, and we put our heads down, and it goes zoom over our head. It was not the whistle because it was so close, and it lasted maybe 15 minutes or something, but all of them just went over our heads, very close, maybe 10 yards or something. But we were lucky if they had just dropped the elevation 1 degree or whatever, you know.
Were you thinking you were dying?
The thing is, I wasn't that afraid. I was afraid, but, you know, I didn't panic, like, you know. Just put our head down and just wait for the room.
So, when was that your second brother in Korea? Was it before you?
I wonder if it was in there at the same time, because when I asked him what he did, he was stationed in Busan, and he prepared, you know, our deaths, the people or the soldiers that killed, they would prepare it to ship back to the mainland, and he said it was awful, you know.
So your second brother was in Korea at the same time you were there?
A little later, but during the war too.
During the war?
Yeah.
But not at the same time?
No.
What's his name, first name?
Dwight, Dwight.
D-E-W?
D-W-I.
D-W-I?
Yeah, D-W-I-G-H-T.
Okay.
Dwight.
That's amazing. Two brothers to the Korean War from one family. I have to thank you.
Okay, thankful that nobody got killed.
Yeah. So what was the most difficult thing during your service in Korea? If I ask you to pinpoint only one thing that you really was difficult.
It's hard to say, because I just accepted what I had to do. Like, you know, I accepted, and I didn't hate it. So I know there were a lot of other GIs hated being there. You know, they grumble and swear all the time. You know, because you know most of them were like 19, 20, 21 years old, and they were just starting a new life, finishing high school, and maybe planning to go to college or starting a new job or whatever, you know. And their life was turned completely around, and before they know it, they were in Korea, and they were always swearing all the time. Every other word is F, 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 you know. And it rubs off on you too. After a while, you speak like that, you know. F in this, F in that, and F, everything F, F, F. But I somehow just accepted it. It's something that had to be done, and hope for the best.
You knew why you were there, right?
Oh, yes. And I believed in it, you know.
But you know, in our history, the Japan and Korea didn't go very well together.
Yeah, good. And I just finished reading a book about the history of Korea, and there was so much conflict between Korea and Japan, you know. Japan tried to take over Korea, and then the one war lasted about 7 years, when, I forget this.
Toyotomi Hideyoshi.
Yeah, he tried to conquer Japan, but
Korea.
Yeah, Korea. They had so much trouble they finally gave up.
Yeah.
Because that one admiral,
Lee Sun-shin.
yeah, he was like a genius about ship warfare. He always won the battles against the Japanese ships.
So, what do you think? We are very close to each other, right?
Yeah.
Very close. Only 40, not even 40 minutes, but very close. Japan used to be second largest economy in the world. Korea is 10th largest economy. China is now second. If we combine this GDP of three neighbors in East Asia, it counts more than 1/3 of the whole GDP in the world.
Wow.
But we are fighting against each other and we
Yeah.
hate each other so that it becomes the kind of, it's too convenient for other country, right?
Yeah. But, Japan and Korea are so small, in land area, but economically they're still
They are very
very
powerful.
strong. Yeah.
Yeah.
If they could get together and work together, they would really be, very influential in the world economy.
What would you say to the future generation of Japan and Korea?
I don't know, just get your act together and work together. The history is past already. Because look at Second World War, Germany, Japan, and Italy were all friends.
Yes.
And the U.S. and Great Britain and other nations were on the other side. But we're all friends with Germany, Japan, and Italy. We get together now and work together.
James, I want to thank you and your whole family being part of this Korean War, okay? And you are the direct witness of Korea transformed from the rubles, the ashes, to the 10th largest economy in the world. We used to receive aid. Now we are offering aid to other countries.
Yeah.
And we were able to do this because you fought for us. So I want to thank you.
I'm really proud of the Korean people. I mean, it's amazing what they're doing, They're giving back to a lot of countries, yeah. I'm 1/90th Korean because I spent 1 year in Korea.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of that. So I just hope someday, North Korea and South Korea will be one nation again, And it's not in land area, it's not that big, yeah. It's about 150 miles wide, yeah.
Yes, that's right. So,
And they were one nation for years and years and years, and they kept fighting the Japanese and the Chinese and the Mongols, and they're an independent country,
that's right. So we really hope that someday can be reunified.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
hope so.
Thank you, James, again.
Okay, that's all right.